Hi, and welcome to the Greenhouse Doctor at Greenhouse Stories, where I share with you some of my experiences in the greenhouse, the garden, and with aquaponics, and some of my experiments and consequently some mistakes, from which come some ideas that will help us together grow some of our own food. Let's take a look at today's topic. Today we're going to go into the greenhouse and look at a water-saving irrigation head design used for the planter boxes in there. Let's have a look. So in the greenhouse you can see I use planter boxes all the way around. Now again, this was an evolution, an afterthought, because I used to plant directly into the beds that were here on the ground, down there and all around. Now the problem with that, particularly when you're growing things that you're cycling through over and over again, like vegetables, planting, harvesting, removing roots and replanting, very bad on an aging person's back. And so planter boxes were the go. You want to be able to irrigate them, have some sort of automation if you like, unless you're watering them by hand in a small greenhouse. Automation helps obviously, so you can tend to other things. But the problem with a lot of the irrigation heads, and they come in a variety of different heads. So what you see here is, you see here one type of irrigation head, and depending on where you are in the world you get a variety of different other styles. This one's a very similar one with some small jet outputs at the spray head. This is a slightly different one again, and this is a misting head. And so I'm just going to show you an interesting hack, a design that I found to maximize the water retention inside the small planter box, so as to be conservative with water use in the greenhouse. Firstly, let's have a look at what I'm talking about in regards to these spray heads that present some challenges when trying to confine the water inside a small planter box. So here the irrigation head is running, and these two have been adjusted not too badly, confining the water inside the planter box. But you'll see, and those of you who use these will know that they're very difficult to finally adjust, and it is not too hard, as you can see, to get the spray running right out. And I'm getting a little bit wet here. It's running right out of the, and adjusting it is challenging at times to confine the water inside the planter box. Now that adjustment itself is not too bad, but the problem is some of the time we're wanting to close one off or two off or more off, or turn one or more back on as we're planting. So we're not using water in planter boxes that have no plants in them, part of the conservation idea of water. So when you change the water pressure by turning one on or off, or one or more on or off, then it changes the pressure in the system, and you get the problem with these jets that were adjusted perfectly fine. Then because of the change in pressure, either not producing enough water or spraying out of the planter box. So that's the problem that we're trying to get around today. So depending on where you are in the world, you might have to find some suitable components for this hack. But what I've got here in Australia from Bunnings is this irrigation head, so we're going to use this. It's got an interesting design. It's got this little spine here, which is useful, and you'll see that very momentarily. So what we do is we're going to take a stake, to the irrigation stake. I'm going to cut a bit of a groove into it here. Now that groove is going to allow that spine to sit in there. I'm just going to enlarge that a little bit. So sit nicely in there. And we're actually going to use this inverted upside down thusly. So your irrigation hose, a little bit of a cable tie to create more resistance and retain the irrigation head better. And then that's in nicely there. It's going to sit in here, and we're going to cable that, tie that. Okay, there we are. So we've got our irrigation head facing downwards, like so. And that's it. That's what's going to help us achieve what we're wanting to do in retaining the water inside the planter box. And I'll show you that in action. So for an irrigation head like this, you might consider drilling a round hole instead of a slot in order to lock that in that way, drilling a hole in the stake. So here is one that I prepared earlier in action, placed in the planter box upside down, the irrigation head upside down and slightly at an angle, not perfectly vertically on the stake. And you can see that the head produces a nice downward facing fan and reaches different areas in the planter box. You can adjust the height or the angulation if you want to change where that fan radiates to. So the angulation will help you that, and you can have vertical change. But in this situation you can leave the setting on full, and with turning on or off additional heads, it will not significantly affect the way this behaves. So in the other heads that you saw, depending on how many heads you turn on and off, it could change where the water reached and how far it extended, and sometimes spraying out of the planter box itself. So there you have it. So as you add plants, this inverted little cup simulating a plant, you will find that the plant may grow here and get its irrigation from this one of the jets from the fan, and then the other irrigation continues to carry through to various other plants in the system. So depending on where you place your plants, that plant will probably get water from that little jet, and the other jets may go through and in between the other plants, reaching various parts of the planter box and wetting the whole planter box relatively uniformly there. So hopefully that's been a useful tip, useful hack. Please subscribe and give us a thumbs up if you want to see more in the greenhouse. See you next time.